quotation, what's quoting as far as the wicked nations? It says, verse 3, let us tear their fetters apart and cast away their cords from us. Notice that. Does this mean that the Messiah is greater than the Father? No. But what it shows is that we see how the nations, it wasn't just the Father they had an issue with. They had an issue with his Son. You see this, my family? His Messiah. Listen. Verse 4. He who sits in the heavens laughs. Adonai, or the Master, scoffs at them. Then he will speak to them in his anger and terrify them in his fury. That's powerful. It shows how even though the nations in this regard, they're trying to plot against the Father as well as his Messiah. And notice how he laughs at them. Notice that. Notice how he laughs at his enemies. You see this? But notice in verse 5, it says, then he will speak to them in his anger and terrify them in his fury. But as for me, I have installed my king upon Zion, my holy mountain. That's power. See, Abba has a king that he's going to put on the throne. Understand that if you go back to verse 2, it talks about the kings of the earth take their stand and the rulers take counsel together. But notice, you see, so notice how these particular ones in their sectarianism in this regard, the kings of the earth and the rulers of the nations, knowing how they're trying to concoct plans against Master Yahuwah, the Father, and his Messiah. But notice here, look what Abba says. But as for me, I have installed my king upon Zion, my holy mountain. People out there are saying there's only one king. They're referring to the Father. Abba is, as far as he is the king, the one most high king, yes. But Abba says he's going to install his king. Now what you got to say about that? Absolutely nothing but foolish rhetoric. Even though here you have the most high king telling us all in the scriptures, as he told our ancestors when they read this, they understood that the king was coming. Abba was going to select the king. He has a king that he's going to set up. He already did it. You see this, my family? But you have people that have different interpretations. But understand what he says here again in verse 6 for our learning. But as for me, I have installed my king upon Zion, my holy mountain. I will surely tell of the decree of the Master Yahuwah. He said to me, you are my son. Today I have begotten you. Listen, my family. Now let's stop. Everybody with enough common sense would all agree that this is talking about the descendant of David. You see this? Some people, they'll say this is talking about David himself. This is what they'll say. But there's something unique that Abba says here in the prophecy, in this particular psalm, that a lot of people really haven't focused on. Look at verse 8. Look at what he's going to instruct this particular Messiah and King, what he's going to instruct him to do. He says, ask of me, and I will surely give the nations as your inheritance, and the very ends of the earth as your possession. Now the question is there any place where any king of Israel asked for the nations as an inheritance? Is it any king of Israel that asks as far as for the ends of the earth as his possession? You see this? Is there any king of Israel that asked this question? Did he ask the Father for all the nations as an inheritance and for all the earth as an inheritance? David didn't do that. Solomon didn't do that. Solomon asked for wisdom, but Solomon didn't ask for all the nations as his inheritance. He didn't ask for all the earth as an inheritance. But notice what Abba is instructing his Messiah to do. You see this? Listen, my brothers and sisters. Thank you, Father, my King. He says, verse 9, you shall break them with a rod of iron. You shall shatter them like earthenware. Now therefore, O kings, show discernment. Take warning, O judges of the earth. Worship the Master Yahweh with reverence and rejoice with trembling. Do homage to the Son. Some translation says kiss the Son. And you have others that will say learn purity. Our Father King will deal with that as he sees fit. Listen. Do homage to the Son, lest he become angry and you perish in the way. For his wrath may soon be kindled. How blessed are all who take refuge in him. That's powerful. Now, my brothers and sisters, what's very powerful is that when you get to the word, as far as nishku, when you look at the Hebrew as nishku bar, there's much dispute over that. You have some people that they would basically say, well, you know, bar doesn't mean son. Of course, they won't deny that it does mean son in the Aramaic language. They would acknowledge that. They're not that dumb. But they basically will acknowledge that, yes, bar does mean son in Aramaic. And then they'll mention, well, ben means son in the Hebrew language. And so basically what they'll say is that nashku basically means to learn purity. You see, my family. So here's the question that we all need to think about, based on us reading this here, is what does bar mean? You see this? Because people will acknowledge, even in the rabbinic circles, they will acknowledge that bar has more than one meaning. They will acknowledge that. So does it mean son, or does it mean purity or cleanness? Because you have some translations that will render it that way as well. So for those of you who have your Tanakh, and as I find King Lee hopefully will have us to really examine this, but for those of you who have your Tanakh, open it up. And as I find King will have me to wait. For those of you who have your Tanakh, or if you have any type of online device where you can actually open up the Hebrew, go and look at Psalms, look at the 12th chapter, the 12th verse in the 2nd chapter. Look at the Hebrew word bar. I want you all to look at it. When you look at it, of course you have the nikodotes there, and you have the trope. So when you look at bar, you have the bait and the resh. And so basically you have the patak, which is under the bait, and you have the trope, which is the musical note, which is the pazer above the bait. So, and it's pronounced bar. So you have some, if it's, depending on whether the gesh is in there, they would pronounce the bait as va or var. But it's very interesting how that rule of grammar is broken, and many people will still pronounce that, even though the gesh is not in there. They will still pronounce it as ba instead of va. So they're not going to say var, they'll say bar. So again, that's what it pretty much means. Now, I want all of you to really focus on that and really take some time to really look at that. And as our Father can lead, as he guides me and all of us to learn, just homework for many of you who truly want to know. Go, as you look up that word bar, focus on it. Meditate on it, as our Father can have you meditate on it. And really think about that for a moment. Excuse my family. Now, turn to Psalms, the 18th chapter. Go to Psalms 18th chapter, please. And let's look at something very interesting. Psalms 18. And I want you to look at verse 20. If you have a Tanakh, 20 or verse 21. And so, because some of you may not have the actual Tanakh. Of course, many of you who have the Hebrew scriptures, you know that there'll be certain places where the verse numbers differ. So, in your Tanakh, it'll be Psalms chapter 18, verse 20. For some of you, maybe verse 21. So focus on that, and let's look here, my brothers and sisters. And it reads here, I'll read both, but just understand that the number is different whether you're reading from the Tanakh or those of you who have your English translations. Okay, so it says, the Master Yahweh has rewarded me according to my righteousness, according to the cleanness of my hands. He has recompensed me. For I have kept the ways of the Master Yahweh and have not wickedly departed from my Almighty. So what's interesting is when you look as far as in Psalms 18 verses 20, and for some of you verse 20, 21, you'll see the word bar, but you're going to have the inflected form. You're going to have that prefix, and it's pronounced kevod, basically, okay, kevod. So basically, and that basically means light cleanness. So bar is prefixed with the letter kaf. It has a dagesh lane inside the kaf with a hardened, strengthening sound. And under the kaf, it has a shewa. Above the bait, for those of you who are looking at it in your Hebrew Tanakh or whatever online device you have where you're actually looking at the Hebrew scriptures, it says above the bait is the cholam. Under the bait is the trope, or that musical note, which is known as the, for those of you who know, you know as the merka or the mereka. You see this, my brothers and sisters? So that's pronounced kevor. Do you see this, my brothers and sisters? So notice how there it's translated as far as it'll say purity, cleanness. So what we're doing is, as we're led, I found King Lee will go more in depth as he guides us. But just for you to do some homework and really look at the scriptures, you'll see that particular inflection of the Hebrew there. Now, let's go to stay in Psalms 18, and we're going to look at verse 24. And depending on if you have a Tanakh or just your different translations, we're going to look at verse 24 and also 25. And it reads, therefore, the Master Yahweh has recompensed me according to my righteousness, according to the cleanness of my hands in his eyes. With the kind, you do show yourself kind. With the blameless, you do show yourself blameless. So again, when you look at that particular inflected form, when you look at where it says cleanness, it's the same form, kedvar. See that? So it's the same word. So what we're doing is we're looking at a word study and we're seeing that there. There's some people that would question and say, well, why doesn't it say sun there? And don't worry, as I find King Lee, we're going to really look at that in depth. But what they're basically trying to do is they're trying to go here to establish an argument that in Psalms chapter 2, where it says kiss the sun, nashku babad, what they're basically saying is, oh, well, that has to mean cleanness, basically. You see this, my brothers and sisters? But when you look at as far as the inflected form there, we can see that it's not bar, but it's kevor. So we see how the word is different there. Same root. You see this, my family? It has the prefix there, but we can see how people are trying to go here and try to basically assert their arguments to make it seem like bar doesn't mean sun, but it means purity and cleanness. See this, my family? And it depends on its context. You understand, my family? But let's continue. So go to Psalms, flip over, go to Psalms 19. Thank you, Master. Psalms 19. And we're going to look at verses 8 as well as verse 9, depending on if you're reading from the Tanakh or the English translation that you're reading from. And so it says here, Psalms 19, starting verse 8, it says, the precepts of the Master Yahweh are right, rejoicing the heart. The commandment of the Master Yahweh is pure, enlightening the eyes. Verse 9, the fear of the Master Yahweh is clean, enduring forever. The judgments of the Master Yahweh are true, they are righteous altogether. Now here, when you look at the word bar, it's actually pronounced bara. And this time when you look at it, it said here, the bait has a dagesh lene with a kamatz under it. The resh has a kamatz under it. And above the word, you have the trope, which is the Rebia Mugaresh, or the Rebia in Garesh. So that's just a musical note. The way in the synagogue is when they sing, they'll actually, instead of just reading it out in as far as in literature, they'll actually sing the trope. But as I find it can lead me to be very detailed to let you know what you're looking at when you all are looking at the words very closely. And so that word is bara there. You see this? My brothers and sisters. So now let's focus on, so we went there to see the different instances. And even though people will use their assertions and argumentations to try to basically say that bar does not mean son, but it means purity or cleanness, depending on the context, we have to be able to really look at it. So we was just led to go to different, as far as verses, and really look at the inflected forms and things of that nature. You see this? But notice how they're not telling you about the holam that is there. You see this? Or as far as those prefixes that are there, they're not really telling you anything pertaining to that. So what they're trying to say is that this is the same word consistently being consistent throughout the Tanakh. But what happens is that what I found the king is revealing as far as the inflected forms, how it was written. You understand? So when people try to say this is the same word and they're playing off of the English equivalent of it, they're not really telling you the intricate details of what's behind the language pertaining to the inflected forms in the language itself, as far as the Hebrew is concerned. So now let's look at, when you go back to Psalms 2, and when you look at Psalms chapter 2, go back to verse 12, and you have kiss the son, or nashku bar. Let's look at the word nashku. Now what's interesting is that you have certain people, these people in the rabbinical circles, what they'll say, they'll attack, or they're strong opinionated, they'll have their strong opinions when it comes to bar. And what they'll say is that bar, they're basically in their argumentation, they'll say that only means purity. But what's very interesting, they don't keep that same, as far as that same consistency when it comes to the word nashku or nashak. So what they will say is that nashku or nashak, which is the root, nashak or nashak, has more than one meaning. Isn't that interesting? So it's interesting that they'll say bar only means purity, but then when they get to nashak, or the root of nashku, they'll say that it has more than one meaning. Now listen what it can mean. It can mean kiss. It can also mean to arm, or like when somebody is equipped, like a weapon. So what's powerful is that those who understand the language, they know it has more than one meaning. They know that it can mean to arm, to equip, basically, as far as a weapon is concerned. But they also will not negate that nashak, which is the root of nashku, they will admit that means kiss. So what I'm saying is you have, it can mean arm to weapon, to arm, to equip, but it also can mean kiss. You see this, my family? So it's interesting how they'll recognize the multiple, as far as the duality or the different definitions pertaining to nashak or nashku, but they won't have that same, as far as application to the Hebrew word ba, and try to lock it down and single it to only one meaning. It's very interesting, very strange, isn't it? Very strange midrashim, very strange explanation pertaining to the text. So, we have to learn, does it mean, is the text in Psalms 2 and 12, is it saying to arm yourself with purity? Is that what is translated there? Is it saying to arm yourself with purity or to yearn purity? Is that what it's saying? So now, my family, now that we've looked at that, it's just something to think about, these rhetorical questions, to really be thought about. Because now we need to look at something interesting. And as I find Akeem lead, as he leads, we'll kind of look at it again. So now go to Proverbs. So again, it's interesting what we've learned about Psalms as far as the second chapter. as far as reading it in its context, and then also dealing with the words and argumentation that people make when it comes to, as far as kiss the son. Or they'll say, well, that means learn purity. You understand, my family? So now, let's go to Proverbs 31. Thank you, Father, my King. Proverbs 31. And let's go to Proverbs 31, and let's read verses 1 through 5. And it says, in you, O Master Yahuwah, I'm sorry, Proverbs 31. Proverbs 31. And thank you, Father, my King, for the correction. And let's look at Proverbs 31, and again, 1 through 5. In verse 1, it says, the words of King Lemuel, the oracle which his mother taught him. Now, let's stop for a moment. Now, but this is interesting because you have people in their, as far as their interpretation, what they'll say is that this is basically where it talks about the, what we would know today as, people say, the virtuous woman or worthy woman. What they'll say is that this is the mother, and it's very interesting. In the rabbinical side, they'll say that this is Bathsheba, who we actually was speaking of early, David, when he basically took her from Uriah and married her and had Solomon. What many interpretations, what they'll say is that this is actually Bathsheba speaking to Solomon. Do you see this now? So if that is the case, look what it says here in verse 2. What, O my son, and what, O son of my womb, and what, O son of my vows? Do not give your strength to women, or your ways to that which destroys kings. It is not for kings, O Lemuel. It is not for kings to drink wine, or for rulers to desire strong drink, lest they drink and forget what is decreed, and pervert the rights of all the afflicted. Now, what's interesting is that when you look here, you will see you basically see the word bar there for son. You see this? Now, some argumentations, what they'll try to say is that, well, that's actually Aramaic. Isn't that strange? Isn't that something, my family? People who are supposed to be, and this again, it's not to speak evil of them, but it shows the hypocrisy. When people who are supposed to be experts in the language will go here, they will see bar here. You see this? And what they will say, and bar, it means son, doesn't it? It doesn't say, what, O my purity, and what, O purity of my womb, and what, O purity or cleanness of my vows. Is it translated that way? Not even in their Tanakh is translated that way, is it, my family? Those of you in Master Yahushua, true Talmudim. Talmid wa Talmidah, a Master Yahushua of Nazareth. HaMashiach. See this, my family? But what people will do is they'll go here and they'll say, well, see, they get stuck, oh man, because they already know that it doesn't say ben here, it has ba, and it means son in this regard. So what some of them will do is say, well, this is Aramaic. They will assert that Bathsheba spoke Aramaic to her son Solomon. You see this, my family? This is the type of argumentation that's out there. You understand? Even though in the text it's not saying Bathsheba said to Solomon in Aramite. It doesn't say that. Or Lashon Aramite. It doesn't say that, does it? My brothers and sisters. But when people say that, then now what we need to do is when you look at it, the question is this, are we looking at Aramaic here? Is Proverbs 31 written in Aramaic, as some people that are basically, they're saying they're experts in the language? Is it perhaps a misunderstanding? Is this bar? Is this Aramaic here? Well, what's very powerful is when you go back up to verse 1 and where it says the words of King Lemuel. Well, this can't be Aramaic. Thank you, Father, my King. See, you're not going to play with my Father's words. Abba, through his precious eternal word, my King Adonai, through the precious set apart spirit, is going to expose these things. Because if Proverbs 31 was written in Aramaic, then when we look at the word where it says King Lemuel, when we look at the word king, it would say, if it was Aramaic, it would say Malka. It wouldn't say Hamelech. Do you see this? So how can Bar be Aramaic in this regard? And it's translated as son. And you're saying, those out there, these proponents of the interpretations of many of in the rabbinical circles, they're saying that Bathsheba spoke Aramaic to her son Shalom, my ancestor. Our ancestor, who it applies to. So what they'll say is that this is not Hebrew, this is Aramaic. Well, that's in error. That's wrong. It's not accurate. Because if that was the case, when we look at the word king, it would say Malka, not Hamelech. Hamelech, that's Ibrit. Malka is Aramite. Do you see this, my brothers and sisters? So, again, we see the word bar here, and we see that it means son. So what is the matter? What is the result of the matter? What is the end of the matter regarding to that? Is that bar and ben both mean son. Again, the Hebrew and the Aramaic, they're very close languages. And what a lot of people will not tell you is that in antiquity, we have what is known as what? Loan words. Words that came from other languages. The Hebrew language and the Aramaic language begin to be assimilated. You see this, my family? So for anybody to sit here and tell you that Proverbs 31, verses 1, all the way through verses 31 is in Aramaic, and when you look back in verse 1 and we see that's Hebrew there, it's well, we call it Hebrew. It's basically, as far as Ibrit. You see this? So if anybody try to go to verse 2 and they tell you that this is Aramite, they're wrong. If they're doing it unknowingly, they're mistaken. If they're doing it purposely, they are liars, and the truth is not in them. Do you see this, my brothers and sisters? Thank you, my Father, my King. So, as our Father King will lead us to really just kind of focus on some things as he guides us to continue to examine as far as Bar is concerned. As our Father King lead, he'll have us to really go more in depth and to really show us to where we can revisit these things. But as our Father King lead, to just go and really look at the word properly, what have we learned today? We've learned as far as the true salvation from the Father through the Son of David. You see this? We've learned we learned about him as far as his integrity. We learned about the mistakes he's made. We learned about the promises of what Abba said pertaining to the Mashiach. We see what happened to the Son of David, the one who did no wrong, who actually the sins was taken off of his father. The father, David, did not die, but the son did. Do you see this, my family? And then we see Solomon being born, going and examining as far as the prophecies pertaining to the Mashiach, and seeing the inconsistencies of arguments to try to basically say that Bar cannot have, pretty much Bar is just one meaning. You see this, my family? So as our Father King lead to continue to guide us and continue to instruct us and help us to grow more in the faith, we'll be able to, again, not waste time with unbelievers of Master Yahushua HaMashiach, but to be able to just be strengthened as our Father King strengthen us in his word. You see this, my brothers and sisters? And so what's so powerful is that we're able to see a picture of the Mashiach, and to be able to learn from our Father King's precious set apart spirit. And as our Father King guide us, we'll continue to learn and to be able to go back and revisit just certain intricate details, and for all of us to be able to grow. So I thank you, my Father, my King. Thank you. precious set apart spirit. And all of you, again, I hope that you continue to grow in the faith as we continue, as our Father King will have us to do so, with pertaining to the salvation from the Father through the Son of David. You see this, my brothers and sisters? And so, in the name of Master Yahushua, the Nazarene, I bid all of you greetings, and also bid you farewell, and continue to be strong in the faith. You see this, my family? In the name of Abba Yahuwah, through the name of their Son, Adonai Yahushua, of Nazareth, through the precious set apart spirit, Maranatha. Amen.